Hello, I am Dr. Mirela Cernăianu, and I welcome you to the Wellness Optimizing Warrior MD podcast, the WOW MD podcast. I am not your typical wellness coach, and this is not a typical wellness podcast. Here, I'll discuss educational facts about health, hormones, intimacy, anti-aging, and beauty trends, all very hot topics, to empower you to make great choices when it comes to your health and to your body. I want you to go, wow, I did not know that. Or, wow, this is going to make a great difference for me. Our healthcare system is broken and it needs a revolution. You and I can start one today. I am willing to share my knowledge with the world if you're willing to listen. Let's get started. Hello, dear listener, and welcome back to another episode of the Wellness Optimizing Warrior MD. And as the name promises, I really would like you to be wowed by this episode because it's going to address the complicated path of navigating functional testing for thyroid health, specifically the pitfalls of the most commonly used thyroid test, TSH. I would like to start by reminding you that the thyroid is a very interesting and complex organ and a part of our endocrine system. It is an extremely essential endocrine organ in our body. You will feel rather poorly in many ways if your thyroid does not function well, and specifically if your thyroid does not function optimally. There is a big difference between just functioning and functioning optimally. I will come back to this issue, optimal functioning, a little later. So what does the thyroid do exactly in the human body? If you're confused about this, please go back and listen to my previous episode, Thyroid 101. I talked about this extensively, but let me do a quick recap. Number one, our thyroid controls our metabolism. Again, this little gland located front and center of our neck has a significant role in controlling our body's metabolic rate, which is the process by which our cells convert nutrients into energy. That is your energy and your weight right there. So if you're tired and are gaining weight, please check your thyroid. Number two, the thyroid gland regulates production of heat in the body and contributes to maintaining optimal inner body temperature. This is essential for the body's overall function. If you're always cold and need a sweater wherever you go, please check your thyroid. Number three, thyroid is essential for physical growth. In children, thyroid hormones play a crucial role in physical growth and development, including bone growth, as well as proper maturation of their organ systems. Our thyroid hormones are also crucial for brain development when we're young. The thyroid gland is vital for the normal development of the brain, especially during the early stages of life. So, mothers, please pay attention. Thyroid hormones are responsible for the development of neurons and the formation of synaptic connections, the connections between the neurons, our brain cells. These connections are critical for cognitive development and for brain function. Are you planning on getting pregnant or you just found out that you're pregnant? Please check your thyroid. And if your doctor only orders a TSH, please ask him to check more than just the TSH. This test, the TSH, is a very poor indicator of thyroid health. More to come. Today's episode is all about this, I promise. Number four, heart rate management. Thyroid hormones help control heart rate, allowing the heart to pump efficiently and deliver sufficient blood supply to all the organs of the body. Do you have palpitations? Do you feel your heart rate is too slow or too fast? Please check your thyroid. Number five, thyroid regulates digestive function. Our thyroid hormones help ensure that food is moved through the digestive tract, through our intestine, efficiently. This obviously is important for digestion and absorption. Are you suffering from constipation? Well, your thyroid could be underactive. You might have hypothyroidism. Do you suffer from diarrhea? Well, your thyroid could be overactive. Please make sure to check it. Number six, our thyroid supports reproductive health. Thyroid hormones play a crucial role in reproductive health, affecting menstrual cycle in women, affecting fertility and pregnancy. An imbalance in your thyroid can lead to menstrual irregularities, possible issues with getting pregnant. And if you have difficulty getting pregnant or you have a history of miscarriage, please check your thyroid. Number 7, thyroid impacts our mood. Both an overactive and underactive thyroid can contribute to significant changes in our mood. Are you depressed? Do you have low mood? You're feeling blah and unmotivated? Or on the contrary, you have anxiety and panic attacks? Please check your thyroid. Number 8, thyroid impacts our energy levels. Like I mentioned at number 1, thyroid and energy go hand in hand. Are you exhausted, fatigued, and you don't have a cause for it? Please check your thyroid. Number 9, thyroid supports normal muscle function, muscle strength, and control. Our thyroid hormones support muscle development and repair, and they are crucial to a coordinated movement and muscular response. Are you achy and stiff and have been diagnosed with fibromyalgia? Maybe you should also check your thyroid. And if your thyroid is suboptimal, believe me, your achiness, fatigue might consistently and significantly improve if you use thyroid replacement. And number 10, thyroid has a very important role in our skin health. Insufficient thyroid hormone will lead to dry, flaky skin, eczemas, dermatitis, while an overactive thyroid gland might result in a warm, sweaty, flushed skin. So throughout this quick recap of the 10 major things that thyroid does for our bodies, I kept prompting you to check your thyroid if you feel this, if you feel that. So you might be asking yourself right about now, well, what is the best way to check the thyroid? And if you did have thyroid issues, and if you had already seen a physician, and you complain about all the symptoms that I just mentioned, or maybe some of them, but then your doctor says, well, no, we tested your thyroid. It's all good. That's not your problem. How do you know if the symptoms are there, but your testing says it's normal, that you do have a thyroid problem? Well, ideally, blood testing for thyroid should be able to accurately indicate and pinpoint whether you have or not a thyroid that's underactive, low, or hypo, or the opposite. It should pinpoint whether you have a thyroid that's overactive, high, or hyper. So testing should be simple. So as I've promised, I'd like to talk to you about thyroid testing. So please pay attention to this part of the podcast, as it could be very important and will teach you a lot, especially if you're taking thyroid medication or have a thyroid dysfunction. Let me first lay out the basics of thyroid testing and explain what are the major thyroid tests that we have available. Well, let's start with the number 1, the star of our show, TSH. TSH is thyroid stimulating hormone. This is a hormone released by the pituitary gland, supposedly in response to low thyroid, or not released at all if you have a high thyroid level. T3 and T4 are the 2 main thyroid hormones. These hormones can be tested as total T3, total T4, or they can be tested as free T3 and free T4. More on that in the next episode. Reverse T3 is an inactive isomer that literally bogs down the thyroid system. It is important to be tested, especially in people who are starting thyroid medication or in those that are currently taking only T4 medication, known as Synthroid, levothyroxine, Levoxil, or Thyroxine. And last but not least, thyroid antibodies, also known as TPO antibodies, thyroid peroxidase antibodies, thyroglobulin antibodies, and possibly thyroid-stimulating immunoglobulins. All of these tests I mentioned would be part of a complete thyroid panel. However, it is amazing how many physicians are either not looking at all these tests, they're not trained or educated, or simply they might not be aware of the importance of looking at all these tests when they evaluate someone for thyroid dysfunction, or they simply attend and care for a patient who has been diagnosed with thyroid dysfunction and they just refill their medication. So I'd like to break down these tests and talk about each one of them. This episode is mainly dedicated to TSH and why testing TSH, specifically TSH only, it's a bad idea. So TSH means thyroid stimulating hormone. This specific hormone is released by the pituitary gland. So please remember, it is not a thyroid hormone. It is a pituitary hormone. So why do we test a pituitary hormone only and tell patients that their thyroid is fine? That's not a good idea. Looking at TSH only gives the doctor and you, the patient, a very skewed and incomplete view of what is really happening with your thyroid hormones. Why is the crucial question? Well, the answer is simple and might not be readily available for your doctor because maybe your doctor hasn't been taught about this or hasn't read about it or hasn't heard about this anywhere else. But the key issue is if your pituitary release and production of TSH, instead of being a reflection of what's happening with the thyroid levels throughout your body, it's simply a reflection of what's happening with the thyroid levels within the pituitary gland. And if you understand this, then you would know that it would be useless to look at TSH when trying to understand how well your thyroid is working. Let me explain in detail what I just said. Let's start with the fact that the real thyroid hormones are our T3 and T4. Triiodothyronine, T3, and thyroxine, T4. Yes, the thyroid and these two main hormone production is under the influence of our pituitary. So the production of T3 and T4 is influenced and regulated by TSH through a negative feedback loop. This negative feedback loop means that if your thyroid hormone levels are low because you have an insufficient thyroid production, your need of thyroid hormone would be high. That means your TSH will go up. So a high TSH, an elevated TSH, is the sign of a poor functioning or low thyroid. Many physicians and endocrinology specialists consider TSH their North Star when they assess and monitor thyroid function. But this is wrong, and please follow me as I will explain why this is wrong. What you need to know, and what your doctor should know, is that the negative feedback loop between T3, T4 levels and TSH works slightly differently in the pituitary cells compared to the rest of the body. So basically, your thyroid produces the T3, T4 within the thyroid. These two hormones are released and carried throughout your blood to all the target cells. They circulate everywhere, including the brain, including the pituitary. The presence of T3, T4 around the pituitary cells is detected by specific receptors on these cells, and these cells also make TSH. So if the levels of T3, T4 around the pituitary cells would reflect exactly the levels outside the brain throughout your body, then TSH would be a reliable test. TSH would be the North Star, the test that all endocrinologists, specialists, primary care physicians, all the doctors use. However, what you, the patient, needs to know and understand is that the pituitary cells and tissues are protected over the rest of the body. So for some reason, there will always be a much higher circulating level of T3, T4 around the pituitary than there would be around the rest of the other cells throughout the body. So in a nutshell, this explains why the TSH can be normal, but the patient is not normal. This is the key to understanding why TSH is normal, but you actually have thyroid hormones that are low. So again, if you're being told that your thyroid function has been tested and is normal, but the only test that is ordered was a TSH test, thyroid stimulating hormone, then please understand you are not being tested for thyroid. This test only tells you if the pituitary gland is exposed to enough thyroid hormones. It tells you nothing about the exposure of your target cells throughout the body to adequate levels of thyroid hormones. Basing the entire assessment of a patient, of a clinical picture for a patient on this test, TSH, is a common fallacy for all the doctors who manage patients and prescribe or refill thyroid medication. So please know that if your TSH is normal, does not mean that your thyroid functions well. It simply means that the pituitary gland is bathed with plenty of thyroid hormones, keeping your TSH in a normal range. That's what normal TSH means. This brings me to a very important topic. What is normal TSH level? Let's talk about range. Most labs give a range of 0.4 for minimum level and 4.5 for maximum level. This is a huge range. And you need to understand that if your number is close to either side, the lower number or the top number, you might have a possible problem with your thyroid function. Functional medicine and anti-aging medicine looks at optimal levels, not the range provided by the lab. Without going into it too much, what you need to know is that ideally your TSH should be between 0.5 and 2. And just to give you an example, the fertility doctors are really well versed in this and know that their fertility rates will be better if the TSH level is under 2.5. So if they take care of a young woman that's trying to conceive and become pregnant, they try to stimulate her fertility, they will send her back to her doctor to look into why the TSH level is above 2.5. And they might even start her on thyroid replacement therapy because that will increase her chances of fertility. So I mentioned earlier, multiple times now, that the TSH being normal does not equate with a normal functioning thyroid. Let me dig into that a little more now that you know that TSH is simply a pituitary hormone and it's not really a sensor for high or low thyroid throughout the body, only throughout the pituitary. However, in med school, this is what we were taught, that TSH levels are a sensor for the entire thyroid hormone exposure throughout the body. So in order for us to understand and get deeper into this issue, you need to know a little bit about deiodinase. This enzyme called deiodinase has one single purpose. It removes one iodine molecule from one thyroid hormone, converting it into another thyroid hormone. The T4 hormone is an inactive hormone. T3 hormone is our only active hormone. The conversion of T4 to T3 happens under the influence of this enzyme called deiodinase. There's different types of deiodinase enzymes, type 1, type 2. These two are responsible for the majority of conversion of T4 to T3. And there's a type 3, which is an inactivating enzyme. So the balance between these type 1, type 2, and type 3 is crucial and determines optimal function and optimal conversion of thyroid hormones. So again, why am I talking about this enzyme and why am I talking about this process of conversion? Well, because many people have no idea that T3, triiodothyronine, is the main thyroid hormone. That is the only thyroid hormone that matters. It is the active thyroid hormone that is responsible for effecting cellular action. This is the hormone that goes to the cells, talks to them, and tells them to do things. T4 is an inactive thyroid hormone that needs to be converted into T3. This process happens naturally because of the deiodinase enzyme activity. We need these deiodinase enzymes to function well, like we need water. So let's come back to the balance of these enzymes. The type 1 and type 2, which convert the T4 to T3, are in a balance with the inactivating deiodinase. This balance is strongly influenced by everything that happens to the body. Remember, everything in the body is connected. Nothing functions in a vacuum. So what could be the stuff that's happening inside the body that tips the balance between these enzymes in the favor of dysfunction or poor function versus proper optimal function? Well, I'm going to give you 5 circumstances which are very common and describe the majority of people that live on planet Earth, probably. So please pay attention. Number 1 is inflammation. Inflammation is the enemy of everything that's good inside ourselves. Ideally, we would only have inflammation when we heal from something. But the reality is that many of us live in a constant state of being inflamed. So inflammation will cause this balance between the type 1, type 2 deiodinase enzymes and the bad deiodinase enzymes to tip in the favor of the bad enzyme. So you would not convert T4 to T3. The conversion would be poor. You would be thyroid deficient. And there would be also something else on top of that. Number 2, which is that something else on top of that, is insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is easy to diagnose. Women and men that are insulin resistant usually have a large belly, they're overweight, and they have cravings for sugar, and they give into their cravings very easily. But the crew of the matter with insulin resistance is that the receptors for insulin are broken. They're not working properly. This specific situation leads to many problems and many issues, just like ripples in a pond after you throw a stone. But it does reflect a general state of possible hormone disruption that exists in the body, not just for the insulin receptors, but for other receptors as well. So whatever causes the insulin receptors to become unresponsive and dysfunctional, most likely is affecting other receptors for other hormones. It is difficult to diagnose thyroid hormone receptor dysfunction or sex hormone receptor dysfunction, but diagnosing someone with insulin resistance is relatively easy. More on that in a future episode. So the 5 circumstances where the balance between these deiodinase enzymes is tipped in the favor of the inactivating enzyme and a poor functioning thyroid is number 1, inflammation, number 2, broken receptors for hormones and insulin, and number 3, intestinal hyperpermeability, also known as leaky gut. Obviously, all kinds of bad things happen when we develop a leaky gut barrier. The most serious of that is a dysfunctional immune system, specifically an overreactive immune system that creates constant inflammation and reacts to all kinds of foods, specifically, and more importantly, to foods that are supposed to be great for us and full of important desirable nutrients. Not only we react to foods that are good for us, but our leaky gut might not absorb the nutrients from our excellent diet in the way it is supposed to. So if you eat clean and you eat healthy and wonder, what the heck is happening to my body? I don't feel good. It's because your gut barrier is compromised. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole about this. I've talked about it a lot in my 2 episodes about autoimmunity, the new epidemic. Please go back and revisit those. There's lots of information there. Number 4, any acute illness will disrupt your thyroid deiodinase enzymes because your body will go into a survival fight or flight mode, which affects everything negatively. Number 5, any severe restrictive diet will disrupt the deiodinase enzymes. These enzymes are critically dependent on many nutrients like B vitamins, magnesium, iodine, specifically iron, and last but not least, selenium to work properly. So any restrictive diet for weight loss or for any other reason, like you can't eat because you're sick, all of these will provide you with inadequate nutrients to support a clean and optimal thyroid deiodinase function. So what are all these 5 situations that I mentioned? Inflammation, broken receptors, leaky gut, acute illness, and a severe restricted diet or malabsorption. What do they have in common? Well, in all of these circumstances, the majority of people who experience one or more of these conditions will have most likely severe fatigue and low energy. That is the expression of what's happening to their actual power source, the mitochondria. So they probably all have mitochondrial dysfunction. Mitochondria is the powerhouse generator of energy, and this energy is required to be present and optimally function in every cell in our body. So everything in our body depends on optimal, normal mitochondria. So in all of the situations I mentioned above, inflammation, insulin resistance, broken receptors, leaky gut, acute illness, malabsorption, severe nutrient deficiency, these enzymes for the deiodinase reaction of the thyroid hormones will not function normally. That means your thyroid will not function normally. Think about these 4 specific conditions: inflammation, broken receptors, leaky gut, acute illness, malabsorption. This pretty much describes a very large majority of the population of the world. And no wonder so many people have poor thyroid function. There are many reasons for it. So please be aware that if your doctor tests your thyroid and tells you it's in range, that doesn't mean your thyroid functions well. So let's talk a little bit more about why believing that your thyroid must be normal because your TSH is normal is a fallacy and is bad medical information. Like I mentioned before, in order to have biological activity or cellular action, the T4 and T3 hormones must cross the cellular membrane of the cells to get from the serum into the target cells. And that specifically happens with your T3 hormone. The free hormone diffusion hypothesis was formulated in 1960, a long time ago, almost a century ago, 60 years ago. Assumes the concentration of hormones, specifically free T3, free T4 in the serum, determines the rate and the extent of uptake into the cell and determines the intracellular thyroid hormone concentration. So whatever circulates and bathes the cells is actually going to be a reflection of what's inside the cells. This is, however, wrong. Most endocrinologists and doctors assume that this is how the thyroid entrance into the cells works, but that's not how it works. For your thyroid hormones to get into the cells, this specific process is not a passive diffusion process. They don't just come across the membrane of the cell. This process is a carrier-mediated process. And this is the key to why TSH is a bad test for your thyroid. So let me explain some more. Please pay attention. The carrier protein responsible for this process of thyroid hormone entering the cell is extremely energy dependent in every cell throughout the body. It requires fuel, and therefore it's extremely and highly mitochondrial dependent. So when you have mitochondrial dysfunction, this process of thyroid uptake is impaired, and all the cells of the body will have trouble with the thyroid hormones getting into them. What is interesting, and what your doctor might not know, and what I'd like for you to know, is that the carriers responsible for the entrance of the thyroid hormones into the pituitary cells are actually different than the rest of all the cells for the body. These unique and specific carriers are not energy dependent. So these carriers for the pituitary cells are not affected by mitochondrial dysfunction, as are all the other thyroid carrier proteins across the rest of the body. That means, in a nutshell, that the thyroid hormone entrance into the cells of the pituitary is favored and protected above all the other cells throughout the body. So where the rest of the body suffers because it's mitochondrially impaired and the thyroid hormones do not go into the cells, so there is no target cellular effect, in the pituitary cells, the thyroid hormone levels can get in very easy. So they're normal. Hence, the sensor for TSH will detect normal T3 inside the pituitary cell. So your TSH level will stay normal or even low because the pituitary has and senses normal thyroid. But the rest of your body will suffer and will have low thyroid hormone availability and high thyroid needs. Similarly to the insulin resistance, the body is now thyroid resistant, to just sum it up in simple terms. The pituitary will have increased T3 levels inside the pituitary cells with numerous chronic illnesses, allowing TSH to be either low or normal, while the rest of the body will suffer from low thyroid levels and low thyroid activity. So the TSH levels are a marker and a test for simply pituitary hormone levels of thyroid, not for levels of thyroid throughout the body. So everything I told you before explains why the pituitary TSH is the worst hormone test to use in determining your body's thyroid status, especially if you have a chronic illness, adrenal fatigue, fibromyalgia, autoimmunity, etc. But this has been the standard and undisputed dogma for over a century, that TSH is the test to do. It is time we change this. And it is time that you, the patient, listening to my podcast, might need to educate your doctor, as he or she might be stuck in a rut and be very busy with their practice and not have time to spend either money or time out of their schedule to educate themselves with these things. Keep in mind, this education is not always out there. And if they would like to listen to my podcast, please direct them to it. But most of the time, the doctors will have to go and have additional training and take courses, which are not always cheap and require time. And we never have time. If it's one thing we don't have as doctors, is time. So it's not always a doctor's fault, as they're little cogs caught in a system. Finding a doctor who's not a cog in a system might not be easy, but might give you much better results for your outcome and perfect optimal health quest. There might be a cash cost attached to it. Most of doctors that practice this type of medicine are usually cash pay and practice a no insurance medical practice model. So good luck with that, but I'm hoping I gave you enough tools to know more, educate your doctor, ask the right questions, and prompt for the right test. I will end here and continue next week with my discussion on thyroid testing, what you must know other than TSH, and what really matters in the long run. I am happy to help provide you with my opinion and medical advice in case you feel your thyroid needs help or comprehensive testing. If that's the case, please go to www.herabeautyandwellness.com to request an appointment, and one of my lovely associates will contact you and plan your visit or consultation via telehealth. Until I see you next, I'll say goodbye. If you liked the information you heard and you'd like to hear more, please subscribe and follow my podcast. Should you find the content helpful to not just you, but possibly others, please share it and feel free to leave us a review. You are welcome to join the Facebook group, The Warrior Optimizing Wellness MD. I certainly hope that you've heard many things in this podcast that made you go, wow, I did not know that, or wow, I'd like to know more. So keep listening and I'll keep talking.